vampires are back in fashion. That's just the nice way of saying I can now gush and talk about my favorite book series, which is the Vampire Chronicles by Anne Rice. Now, because vampires are back in style, some people might ask me to do like Twilight or, I don't know, the Immortal series, and I'm sorry. I'm gonna bust your bubble right now. I can't do those series because I just find them so absolutely boring. Like, I know that's a weird thing to say concerning vampires, but if a book is just too boring, or even a movie or TV show, if it's too boring, I can't watch it. Like, I'll give it a really good try, but I cannot stand boring stuff. If I find it's taking up too much of my time, I just won't do it. That being said, I get to gush about my favorite book, which is actually the second in a series, like I said, by Anne Rice. I implore you guys to give it a try. If reading isn't your style, there's audiobooks available. I'm sure you could find them on YouTube if you looked hard enough. But that being said, because I put a poll out on my Twitter and the resounding answer was do books, I figured, sweet deal, we can definitely do books. Oh my god, we can do books. So I'm going to pick my favorite book, The Vampire Lestat by Anne Rice, the second book in the Vampire Chronicles series. Every time I ever talk to any about this, they always try and sit there and tell me, oh, but Louis a bad guy. And I'm gonna let you know right now, he's really not. I want to preface this saying, this shit was so gay, like, I'm being serious. It is the gayest anything you'll ever read. The best way to describe this is kind of just by going about it the only way I know how. If you've seen the movie Interview with a Vampire, Tom Cruise played the vampire Lestat, and Brad Pitt played his love interest. And yes, I did double check my notes. It was love interest. It was written as a love interest. The reason why it's kind of just this gay is because it's vampires, dude. Like, let them be gay. That's not really what this video is about, but I am here in defense of Lestat, so I just wanted to get it out of the way of, this shit was super gay, and I super loved it. That being said, the reason why this is a defense video is because we kind of have to look at Lestat as he is presented in the books, more so than any movie franchise. Lestat was turned when he was 20 years old against his will by a vampire named Magnus. The series of events play out thusly. He runs off to Paris with his friend/lover, Nicholas. He was impoverished royalty prior to this, so he wanted to run off to Paris doing whatever you wanted to do when you were, I don't know, young and stupid in the 1800s, because that's when the books do take place. They take place between the late 1800s to 1980. So that's quite a bit of life that he lived as it's presented to us. Living that long, I can only assume you would try anything and everything, including tricking somebody into doing all kinds of horrible stuff because you feel like it. Now, that's a very harsh critique of that, but I do just want to put that out there that that's kind of how this works. The books make better use of it because Interview with the Vampire and The Vampire Lestat are two books that coincide closely with each other. It's the exact same events that are happening from Interview to Lestat when Lestat is having his life cycle with Louis, or Brad Pitt if you've only seen the movies. But the way that the events transpire, it contradicts everything between each other. The best way I can describe this is, it's two people telling you the exact same story of the exact same event, but each of them are convinced that, no, my version of the events is correct, they're lying. I implore you to look at the Mandela effect for more information on why this is, because it's basically saying, no, both of you experienced the same thing, but one of you swears it was a white rabbit, not a brown rabbit. That's just how it is. Also, if you want to look more into queerness in regards to Interview with a Vampire, I do implore you, please look up James Somerton, Somerton, Erton here on YouTube. He will definitely guide you in ways I cannot, because in all honesty, I'm just not that deep into this that I want to pick that apart. But hey, if that's more your jam, by all means, rock it. I believe in you. The reason why I have to make it a point to look at Louis' past is because, well, in all honesty, it's really super crappy what happened to him. He was kidnapped when he was 20 years old by an older vampire and taken forcibly to bed and turned. I want you to I'm going to repeat that in case it kind of flew over your head. He was forcibly turned, as in he was kidnapped, and against his will it's implied rape, right? Gotta stress that. It's implied rape. And then turned into a vampire. The cherry on top of this is that the vampire Magnus that turns him dies the exact same night. For the record, if you read the audiobook, they say it's the next night. If you read it, it says the same night. My point stands no matter what. The point is, Lestat had his choice taken from him in the pursuit of even becoming a vampire. I don't know about you, but if I had been given a choice to be a vampire... I just realized what I said. I already got scammed into a human body. I wouldn't want to be a vampire on top of it. I'm already going to live forever. But my point still makes the stand. If you wanted to be a vampire, you would probably take it. Not most people. Some people just refuse to give up garlic bread, but that's neither here nor there. Lestat, for all intents and purposes, prior to him even meeting Louis in Interview with the Vampire, kind of was forced to... Well, he was forced to be an asshole. So we're going to have to run down the backstory of Lestat, just so that way I can kind of frame for you what happened. After he's 20 and gets forcibly turned into a vampire, he gets left immense wealth and a huge house by the vampire who turned him. No offense, but this always read to me like really bad BDSM fan fiction, like 50 Shades of Grey. Like, that's super crappy and I'm not here for it. But because of what happened to him, Lestat uses his wealth to actually distance himself from his human friends and family and just lavish them in gifts. Because lavishing them in gifts should make up for his absence, or so he believes. Turns out he knows nothing about being a vampire. There's a bunch of rules and regulations and oversight that he's not only not aware of, but he flubs through constantly. He does end up meeting Armand, or Antonio Banderas for the movie watchers in the audience. That being said, he's actually part of a satanic cult of devil worshipping vampires. Not gonna lie, the second I read that in the book, I had tonal whiplash for the next 40 pages because I was so confused, because I assumed being a cult was already part and parcel with being a vampire. I didn't think you needed to say it, but that whatever. Lestat eventually convinces Armand's little troop of cultists to modernize because, well, life is going to keep going on without them and they might get left behind. Armand is not too pleased with this, but he does let Lestat in on some little secrets. First and foremost being, not only are there older vampires than even Armand, they're more powerful. So Lestat takes it upon himself to start carving creepy little symbols into anything he can, trying to entice these older vampires to come find him. He and his mother, who he had previously turned into a vampire earlier in the book, whose name is Gabriella, eventually just take to wandering around the world looking for basically any vampires or anything to do. In Egypt, they part ways, and when he gets badly burned, he buries himself in the sand in Egypt. He gets saved eventually by a vampire named Marius. Marius is the same vampire who turned Armand into a vampire. And through basically shenanigans, Marius takes Lestat to see the king and queen of vampires, the progenitors of all vampire kind, who have been asleep in this Mediterranean cave for God knows how long. Marius tells Lestat point blank, don't come here again, like, you've just been a pain in my neck trying to contact me, but stop trying to find answers. The best thing you can do is go do whatever it is you're gonna do and stop looking to find out more. Lestat, being the 7-year-old he is, decided, nope, I'm gonna do exactly the opposite of that. He ends up waking up the queen of the vampires by playing violin that Marius, the idiot, left nearby. For the record, it explains it better in the book, but I just really wanted to say this, like, Marius, my guy, you had one job. Like, take this boy anywhere else before you ditch him. Lestat ends up playing so beautifully that the Queen of the Dam ends up just eating from him, and him eating from her, which wakes up her husband, who straight up is not happy about the turn of events and seeing some other guy trying to eat off of his wife, so he tries to actually really kill Lestat. And Marius, of course, somehow magically intervenes and takes care of it for him. So Lestat, in the end of the book, kind of just disappears for a little bit. The other Vampire Chronicles series explain better what happens. But the long and short of it is, Lestat, my guy, what the hell were you doing? So you got the backstory of Lestat. Tragic, truly. For the record, I'm not being sarcastic here. It is tragic. Lestat was kidnapped by an older man and taken to bed. Yeah, read the book. Anne Rice did not pull any punches, and she didn't put it in kid gloves either. She said, point blank, dresses it up exactly like how it is and how it should be written, and it's not pretty. But Lestat was kidnapped and taken to bed and turned into a vampire against his will. Lestat was 20, like I said, when he was turned into a vampire. Think about that. He was 2 or 3 years out of high school when he was kidnapped and raped. Whether you want to take that in a sexual nature or not, he was raped. While the vampirism didn't, turn him crazy, the trauma of that night probably messed with him a lot. Lestat, as a survivor of this unwanted anything and everything, would indeed have some things going on with him. Survivors of assault have an increased likelihood of developing symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, such as nightmares and intrusive thoughts. They might feel as though they are always in danger or need to always be on guard and may distrust other people. So going down that list, let's see how many of them he ticks off. Recurrent, unwanted, distressing memories of the traumatic event? Yeah, Lestat often thinks about the vampire who turned him and then died the very same or next night. Reliving traumatic events as if it were happening again via flashbacks? Oh boy. You as the reader, go back to the night Lestat was turned a lot. Lestat is often thinking about that night, and if you read it a certain way and in between the lines, it is not with any kind of fond memories attached to it. Upsetting dreams or nightmares about the traumatic event? Okay. In the book, we're not given this, but the movie Queen of the Damned, which came out in 2002, does show us this. Lestat sometimes jerks himself out of dreams because of everything that happened to him. While it's not for the vampire that turned him, it is for the Queen of Vampires in the movie. But I'm going to let this point stand because the flashbacks that happen in the movie are so quick that sometimes blink and you'll miss it. It does sometimes show Louis in these flashbacks, meaning, yeah, what Louis did to him, or Brad Pitt for the movie watchers, still sticks with him really bad. Severe emotional distress or physical reactions to something that reminds you of the event? Yeah, Louis had a lot of instruments in his house, and Lestat always liked to play them, and Lestat plays music when he gets too overwhelmed or angry or upset. He dances, sings, or plays music because all of those things are things he can control. The reason why I bring this up is because whenever Louis in the books, Interview with a Vampire, tried to bring up anything about Lestat's past, Lestat would make a point to be doing anything else music related to dissuade him from that train of thought, or just outright belittle him because he just didn't want to talk about it. Another symptom is avoidance. Lestat often in both the films and books sidesteps questions that would bring up his past because he doesn't want to remember any of it. That's like one of the main things in the book that he does whenever anybody asks him about the night he was turned, or vampires that he's met, or even how things are going with him. Lestat makes it a point to avoid and deflect because he just doesn't want to talk about it, because talking about it kind of makes it a little bit more real. Another symptom is irritability, angry outburst, or aggressive behavior. Overwhelming guilt or shame is another one. For the record, this last one here, the guilt and shame, is up in the air. We're never told that Lestat feels guilty or ashamed about anything he's done. In fact, he makes it a point to tell anyone who will listen that he is the perfect vampire above all else. Which, in my opinion, as an eldritch being scammed into a human body, sounds like projection than actual self-reflection. Play the role of the monster, cool and suave with no feelings beside your own ego, because you can't hurt the monster. And that's what Lestat wants to present to you. Somebody untouchable. But he is touchable. Interview with the Vampire proves it when Brad Pitt, or Louis, leaves him for dead and he ends up haunting the old house down in New Orleans. It sounds like he might be trying to fool anyone who tries to dig into his past. The best way to distract yourself is to make you focus on anything else, big or small. Lestat wants you, the reader or the viewer, to look anywhere but at the cracks in his own armor, because if you see the crack in the armor, there is a chance that maybe you'll just try and crack the whole armor open. So this is a defense video. That being said, the defense can't rest just yet. This will be my final point before I leave you. Lestat was not a monster by birth. He was made into one. Does this excuse all the things he's done? No. Not even a little bit, no. Does this explain why he was the way he was? I hope it does. Lestat is a victim long before he's the villain. It reminds me of a lot of stories where the hero just eventually becomes the villain because villains tend to live longer. The hero always makes the sacrifice play because they're the good guy. To be clear, Lestat would not have lived long if he had not been turned into a vampire. Realistically, the life expectancy for people back in the day was like 40 or 50 years old. As a vampire, he's watched empires rise and fall. Would I want to become a vampire? Again, no. I already got my own stuff going on. But I know people who would. We all know people who would. We all have that one friend that is totally down to be a vampire because of whatever reason. But they're down for it. But the choice of being turned into a vampire is probably really important to them because it has to be. Choice is always important. Lestat had that choice taken away from him. He had a lot of choices taken away from him in the book, to the point where you're like, this man cannot catch a break no matter what he does. The defense here is that Lestat I promise I can speak English, was always going to be the bad guy in this story. But how he got there was very much not something he had any choice in, or any control over, really. So the defense here is that, yeah, Lestat's the bad guy. But I promise you, that if he had already been a bad guy when everything else was going on, he could have done a lot worse to so many more people. I implore you, read the books if you want to make your own educated opinion on anything. I'm just one random person on the internet that's trying to make one video saying that, no, as bad as he was, Lestat could have most assuredly been so much worse.